Everyone, thank you so much for coming to our Be Informed session. This is our fourth Be Informed session this year, and I really appreciate everyone taking the time to come out. Hopefully you are highly interested in our topic of teaching and learning, past, present, and future. I think it's going to be a great night of us sharing some of the things about our district from the past, from the present, and of course what we're looking at into the future. As you can see, we have some of our wonderful BISD principals here, and I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves here in just a little bit. But I want to just kind of go over the format of our Be Informed session quickly before we get started. Some of you may have attended some Q&A sessions, our first two a couple of years ago, and we've kind of changed the format just a little bit here. We spend the first 30 minutes doing a presentation, and that's what they're going to be providing for you this evening, is really presenting to you some information about teaching and learning. And then after that 30 minutes is up, then we're going to collect any questions you may have. You should have received some index cards where you can write your questions down as we go, but we can pass some of those out along the way as well. But you'll write your questions down, we'll collect those questions, and then we will give our principals an opportunity to answer those for you. So our goal is to keep it within this hour time limit, and we have done a good job of really sticking with that this year, and so hopefully we'll continue to do that this evening. But again, thank you so much for being here, and so that we stay within our time limit, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our wonderful principals. And I think we're starting with a video too, right? Okay, so I'm going to hand over my... Okay, we're going to start with a little video, so just one second, I'll hand this off.
Since the dawn of its existence, the purpose of public education has been fairly simple and straightforward. We want our kids to grow up to be happy, healthy, productive members of society. Even though our purpose in education has remained steadfast for over 150 years, a lot of things have changed. Remember the pioneer days? Well, probably not, but it looks something like this. During this time, people mostly lived in small rural communities and predominantly worked on family-owned and operated farms. So how did we educate and prepare children to function successfully in this environment? Well, unless you were rich enough to afford a private tutor, your children were educated in one of these, a one-room schoolhouse. Think about how well this matched the context of the day. School schedules matched the agrarian calendar, and students were educated in small, multi-age, cooperative learning groups. As students mastered the basics, they became apprentices, learning trades, crafts, the family business. We call this Education 1.0. Education imitated the lifestyle and work environment that people were engaged in at the time. But come the turn of the 20th century, society changed with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. In a very short amount of time, the living and work environment of our society quickly changed. People began to flock to major urban epicenters where jobs and commerce were widely available. New inventions and modes of transportation meant the rapid expansion of our economy. No longer were people working in fields and family trades, but instead in manufacturing plants and assembly lines. So what did we do to prepare young people to meet the needs of the day? We created an industrial model of schooling. Education 2.0. If most people worked in this environment, then it made sense that we teach them in this one. In order for students to be successful in the industrial age, they needed to learn how to master repetitive tasks and how to do solitary work in a group setting. They needed to learn how to work in allotted segments of time and how to follow instructions from a manager who valued the quantity of work produced. It was an efficient model that perfectly met the needs of society. Everyone was expected to learn in the same place, at the same time, at the same rate, and in the same way. Today we find ourselves in a time very different than the days of the Industrial Revolution. The context of society, and in turn education, has rapidly changed. Most of us don't work in factories or on assembly lines, and yet our classrooms still look like this. Things are changing, and changing fast. Technology is advancing so fast that in just a few short years from now, we'll probably be laughing about how archaic smartphones were, the same way that we laugh about 8-track players and VCRs. There is little about our world that resembles the world of Education 2.0, and as great as technological advances are, it may not be enough to put a laptop or tablet in front of every student and continue to teach them as if we were preparing them for an assembly line. After all, a vast majority of employers surveyed identified collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking as very important skills. Unfortunately, only about 1/4 of job seekers were rated as excellent in the skills employers believe are most important. Perhaps it's time we ask ourselves if Education 2.0 still prepares young people to be happy, healthy, productive members of society. The context of our society is rapidly changing, but the purpose of education remains the same as it's always been. Today, our job is to educate young people to be successful in the 21st century, because it may not be too long from now that your morning commute looks more like this. There's a vast world of possibilities for young people today, and if we want them to be equipped with the skills necessary to be successful in Life 3.0, then it's probably time that we start talking about Education 3.0.
Christy Traylor, and I'm principal at Freeport Intermediate School. This is my 21st year here at BISD. Started as a teacher at the ripe young age of 18. No, I'm just kidding. But many, many years ago, in a galaxy far, far away, not really, there was, we were in here at BISD, and it wasn't 40-something degrees outside in April. I don't ever remember it being. But we had a district, or at least our district was considered to be a more fluent district, and we were less diverse than we are today. Our economically disadvantaged population has increased significantly, and I like to use my school as an example over time. And I go back to '93 because that's the year that I started. In '93, we were about 55% Eco-D, and as we go to 2003, which is about 10 years later, we were right at 68%, and just as of last year, we were at 80%. So those changing numbers, those changing demographics, our more diverse learners, meeting those challenges have become a challenge for us and meeting the diverse needs.
Hello, I'm John Galavis. I'm principal of Freeport Intermediate. Again, I've also started here, but not 20 years ago, but 11 years ago in 2003. Again, to talk about some of the things that have changed. The Eco-D was one of the main things. The enrollments in schools were different as well. They were a lot lower. One of the things that we had were schools were built in, of course, you know, neighborhood schooling. It wasn't until recently we had new buildings being built, which was Clute Intermediate and Lake Jackson Intermediate, and we had Brazosport High School refurbished, and that was just within 8 years. We also had, we were planning as individuals, as campuses, where when we did planning for our campus, there was really no whole lot of collaboration with other schools. We got to see what we did within our campus, but didn't get to branch out into other campuses to see what they were doing, to see what worked. We basically were able to just do it on our own and not really look and see. Our district, of course, had many accolades going on and awards throughout the state, but wasn't really recognized within the district as well because it was more or less like islands. In addition, our testing, of course, had always gone through peaks. I think that goes with all the testing state assessments that have gone by through TOS, TAX, and STAR. We always tend to find a assessment point, and then we kind of increase from there, and then we go back to a different type of test. So I think for the most part, again, for my campus, it wasn't until recently that the only utilization or efficiency that we built were combining our 5th grade onto our campus, which was back in 2006. And that was part of the past.
I'm Amy Pope. I'm the principal at Brazosport Elementary. I have been in this district for 13 years, 16 years in education. And just tying that past to the present, I came from a district that had BISD come and present to them. So when I received a job in BISD, I was extremely excited because I was coming to people that wanted to share. I taught 7th grade math at LJI around the same time that Christy was also teaching 7th grade math. And Christy and I didn't actually have a conversation until I became an assistant principal, because people really truly did work in islands. And one of the things presently our curriculum work groups are doing they're bringing our teachers together. So not only are our teachers talking at the campus more and sharing their great ideas, they're excited when they come back from their curriculum work groups and showing me things that they've learned from another teacher. So they're able to take the areas that they know they need to grow in, and they're able to listen to the ones that are strong in it, and they're able to grow. And then also the things that they're strong in, they're able to share, and it gives them more confidence.
I'm Robin Pelton. I'm principal at Rasco Middle School, and this is my, I think, 26th year in the district. I started my career here, and I've worked at 7 of the campuses within this district, so I've been around for quite a while. I hear what my colleagues have shared as the past, and Ms. Pope is expressing as kind of where we are now. And a couple of the things I want to hit on is the collaboration piece, which Ms. Pope mentioned. And it's hard not to talk about the past when you talk about the present. My first year, I literally walked into a classroom. I looked around the classroom when Ms. Brewer, Jackie Brewer, released us to our rooms. I looked around, and I sat down in a desk, and I just kind of tapped my finger, and I looked at the globe, the only resource that was in my classroom, and I thought, I wonder what all the other teachers are doing in their rooms right now. And I really had no idea where to start. And at one point a teacher came by and gave me a teacher's edition of the new social studies adoption and began looking at that. And I kind of got started from there, but literally that's all I had was a map, a globe, and some teacher's editions. And now, where we are in the present, we really are receiving a great deal of technology, which is very exciting. Teachers this year have received iPads for their personal use, iPads for their classroom use. They have received Chromebooks, which was new. For a lot of teachers, had never even seen a Chromebook before it was brought into their classroom this year. The Mimeo boards, there are probably some of you in this room who have not seen the Mimeos and understand how they're used. That's brand new, and we are experiencing that in our present. Teachers and students in the last couple or 3 years have been introduced to Google Drive and the capabilities that are there. Hangouts was brand new for administrators this school year, I think this semester. Very, very new for us. We've been using programs such as Eduphoria and Learning.com for a few years, but they've changed so much that what I want to point out about the present is that we have a lot of new things coming at us, and we are excited about what's happening, and we are valuing what we're receiving, hardware, but also software. We are thrilled with it, but we are also a bit overwhelmed because it's coming fast, and teachers are in need of professional development to kind of catch up to speed. They're in need of time to practice and try out their new skills. And it is a time of a little bit of an intimidating kind of feeling for teachers in the classroom because they've been used to being the person in the room who knew everything, and they shared what they knew with their students. And that's not necessarily the case now. With some of the technology we've received, they really, in some cases, know less than students know. And that's really a little bit of a struggle. So I really wanted to point out that while we're excited about where we are in the present, we also are a little bit uneasy. And I was thinking about it over this weekend, and I would leave you with this analogy before I pass it on to those that will talk about the future. I think about us being at a bridge, and there's a land that we know and we're familiar with, and we feel pretty safe here. But across the bridge is a new place with lots of great things to offer. But it's new and it's different and it's a little bit scary. And some people, some of our teachers, some of our administrators, we've already crossed that bridge. Some people are already deep in the meadows. But some people are still on this side afraid to take that first step. And they're clinging to what they know because it's safer. And there's a lot of people somewhere along that bridge. And we're all just trying to make our way, but we're excited about what's coming. We just are a little nervous about it at the same time, and know that we need each other, we need training, and we need time to really develop our skills.
Thanks, Robin. My name is Brent Jacob. I'm the principal at Lake Jackson Intermediate. And as we start to look towards the future of BISD, or the future of education, I think we really look towards the strategic plan, and particularly and really important, it's that individual need that really excites me, because the technology, as fast as that technology engine is changing, it opens up opportunities for better diversity, better differentiated instruction in the classroom, and to meet the needs of all learners through the use of technology and incorporating it appropriately. And we're learning as quickly as we can, as Robin and the others have spoken about, and as fast as we can get that into the hands of the students, it's helping our students become more equipped and better learners in the 21st century. You know, people that look towards the future and study where technology is going and the jobs that are going to be out there, there are many jobs right now that are not even created or thought of that our students will be involved in 10 years. And so we need to look at how are we educating those kids to become collaborative learners, to learn and work with each other, as y'all saw in the video in the 3.0 model of how does that work. And the teacher kind of changes, it creates an environment where students learn at their own pace and with different assessments, but all in the same classroom, learning from each other, learning at a deeper content ability with the use of technology, with the teacher working as the facilitator, the coach, the mentor, instead of just the lecturer that has all the knowledge, because the knowledge is so readily accessible with our smartphones, from a Google search or just about anything, that it's easy for kids to attain that knowledge, and they don't necessarily need that facilitator, but that coach, that mentor is there, that teacher is there to help guide that learning, to provide assistance when it's needed, and to monitor through the use of technology. And one of the things that we've embarked on at LJI is the flipped classroom model, where teachers will videotape certain lectures, pieces of lectures, and allow students to watch that at home, take notes. There's guided questions that go along with that lecture, and then come back and work collaboratively with their peers as the teacher facilitates the continued learning the next day based on some of the lecture and information that those students watched on the video. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to some other future ideas and concepts.
Hi, I'm Rita Pundit, and I'm the principal at Velasco Elementary. This is my second year as principal, but I have been a student in Brazosport ISD. I was actually a student at Velasco, Freeport Intermediate, Brazosport High School, and then went on to work at Freeport Intermediate with Ms. Traylor. So I am very excited to share some ideas with you about future plans and ideas that we have at Velasco, as well as in our district. I agree with Robin that it's very difficult not to mention the past or the present, and so I can tell you from a student standpoint that yes, I remember being a learner in a classroom where our teachers didn't collaborate with other teachers in the building, and even less throughout the district. And as I went into the classroom, I had the same feeling that Robin had, is there weren't any resources. I started a week before Thanksgiving without a mentor and without the teacher induction program, so there really wasn't much support. And I can tell you now that our teachers have an abundance of support that I would have loved to have had. But let me speak to the future and tie into some of the things that Mr. Jaco said. I have an article from Forbes magazine, and it lists the top 10 skills that employers most want in 20-something-year-old employees. And those being ability to work in a team, ability to make decisions and solve problems, ability to plan and organize, prioritize work, communicate verbally, ability to obtain and process information, analyze quantitative data, technical knowledge, proficiency with computer software programs, ability to create and or edit written reports, and then ability to sell and influence others. And when I think of that last one, I think of communicate. And we often say that our young learners don't communicate, all they do is text. But they truly are communicating. They're communicating probably way more than we communicate, just differently. I can speak from an example of my 12-year-old son who is Skyping with other people, nationwide and worldwide, and creating YouTubes and just all of these things that he's had to teach me how to do. But as education goes in our district and trying to meet the needs of our learners and prepare them to compete globally and communicate globally, at Velasco we're going to be implementing and piloting project-based learning. So project-based learning basically allows students to learn at their own levels, many of the things that Mr. Jaco mentioned, and the students learning to tackle realistic problems. We often hear students say, well, it's boring, or it doesn't relate to me, and I really don't know why I'm there. Well, we really are charged to prepare our students for A, jobs that have not yet been created, or B, to go out and be able to compete in the workforce for many of these jobs. And so making it relevant to them would really help with that motivation, because I know I hear a lot of teacher colleagues that say they're not motivated. Well, they're not motivated because we're not meeting their needs. So we are piloting this project-based learning that will encourage the students to learn, same curriculum, but with a project that they would feel would be relevant to their learning. Let's see. One of the examples when I was at this training was having, thinking of it like this. How many times have you ever been a passenger in the vehicle and made it to a destination, say 3 hours away, and then not remembering how you got there? And so I thought about that and went, wow, that's so true. I would need my GPS to get me back there. So that's sort of the place that our students have been. They've been the passengers. And so when we ask, why can't you get back to that point? It's because they weren't in the driver's seat. So hopefully some of the things that we're implementing is going to put the students in the driver's seat and allow the teacher, which is crucial and very critical, to be that passenger alongside of them, getting them to that point so they can get back to that point over and over again independently. And basically, like I said, these are things that we are going to be piloting and hoping will bring some innovative things to what our students need.
Didn't they do outstanding? What a great group of principals we have. We are so excited to have such amazing instructional leaders. Let me ask you guys, as you talked about the past, present, and future of teaching and learning in BISD, some of you who have been here for a while, tell me a little bit more, and Mr. Jaco touched on this, about how teaching has changed. It's gone from what to what? How has that changed?
I know as a classroom teacher, it was paper-based. Everything was on a manual of some sort, where there was no computers. Well, there were computers, but there were desktops, and when they weren't able to take them home or anything, things were a lot more, as I say, but archaic almost. So As far as teaching, it was left to us to design on our own.
So teaching has obviously changed, and it's gone from something that was really, you got a textbook or you had worksheets, things of that, to what Mr. Jaco and Mrs. Scundup said, is it becomes where the teacher is now more of a facilitator. Where I like to say that the students are the ones going home nice and tired, and that's the way it should be, from thinking so hard. Yes, absolutely.
We mentioned getting the Mimeo boards, which is an interactive whiteboard for our students ultimately. And one of the teachers came in the other day, and it is very uncomfortable because the teacher does have to let go with this new way of learning, is let go and let the students really work through the problems themselves. And so she said that they had a little time before they had to go to lunch, and this one particular student finished early, and she had pulled out the instruction manual for this Mimeo board, and she had it sitting there, and he was just looking around the room, and he grabbed it, and he said, "Do you mind if I read through this?" And she said, "No, go right ahead, read through it." And he got up and started reading through, he had the manual in one hand, she said, and he was just going through that board and saying, "Come here, Miss Lowry, look, you can do this, and you can do that, and next time we're gonna use that in our lesson." And she was like, "Great, wonderful." So he really taught her, but it was a struggle to let go. But yeah, it's definitely changed.
So that's a great segue. So let's talk about our learners then. How, when they're learning, how they learned in the past to how we want them to be learning in the future, to what level is that? What level? They went from learning basic.
Yeah, they started off, I mean, we grew up in an environment where we depended on the teacher for the information, and we worked through the problems the teacher gave us. But now, there's probably not too many questions out there off the top of our minds that are not Googleable, if Googleable is a word. You can pretty much search any question, and it still amazes me sometimes when I'm searching for something, I'll put the most bizarre thing in and in hopes that it's there, and sure enough, it's there. And so kids come to us with that knowledge base to some extent already. And so as teachers, we have to find ways to keep those kids engaged and deepen their thinking with that information. And so that's where the teacher moves from that lecture position to more of that facilitator, that coach, that mentor, and starts to guide that learning to allow those kids to figure out how to take that knowledge that is so readily available and how do you apply that? How do you use it to solve problems and to go further with it? And so that's where education is shifting to. Textbooks, as Mr. Galaviz mentioned, used to be paper-based. We're looking at now, probably just years away from state and national, worldwide, online. And so textbooks will all be online. And so it's a different world. It's how kids communicate and work with each other. It's becoming very electronic, and they come to us in a different type of preparedness than what they did 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. And we walked through a classroom the other day where, and I remember specifically learning about food chains, but it was always a hand-drawn picture, and you might have done a salt map with it. And it was limited to that one thing. And my second graders are flipping through on the iPad, and they saw probably 15 to 20 different food chains. So, and it was through Google, and you can see all the pictures, but their exposure is a little bit different than us standing in our kitchen making salt things to do the different food chains or to label the different cells. They can see all sorts of different things just through that one piece of technology.
Absolutely, and I was with Amy when we walked through that classroom the other day, and it was quite funny because there was a funny picture that a kid came across, and it was of a big fish, a man with like a swimmer with fins on, and then a little fish, and the little boy said, I don't think that's a real food chain. Yeah, I'm not thinking that's a real food chain, but tell me why. And he was able to tell us why he didn't think that was a real food chain. So it was very cute. That was great. Did you have something to add to that?
I was just going to talk about in the math classroom. I remember when I first started teaching, it was stand at the front of the classroom and teach them fractions, teach them decimals, teach them percents in isolation. Teach them the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And then eventually, as we moved through tossed attacks, we were adding a little bit of problem solving. But these days, the kids in the classroom now, they have to take multiple steps. Not one question that I've seen is less than three, maybe 4 steps. And to be able to take all those isolated skills that they were being taught all these years and put them all into one problem and get to that point. And I also remember thinking, okay, the answer is the most important thing. But now, it's how did I get there? And can you tell me? So every once in a while I get an opportunity to go in the math classroom, and I'm very excited to go in there and teach every once in a while. And a student one day was telling me, okay, well, what about this answer? I said, I don't care about your answer. I want to know how you got there. And if you can explain to me how you got there, then I know you're on the right track. Because they have to be able to talk it out. It's no more just find the common denominator and add, subtract, and multiply, and divide. It's you have to know all that and then some to be able to problem solve. And we always say utilize all your resources in the classroom, whether it be your cell phone, if that's acceptable at that time for that instructional activity, or whether it be your elbow partner right next door to you. But I think that's the biggest change for me in a math classroom, is going from that teaching skills in isolation to having to teach them all at once, and just kind of, kind of review a little bit along the way, maybe through a warm-up or something like that. But everything is just so, I don't know. Did I get that point across?
Well, I really love the metaphor that Mrs. Felton made of the bridge. So talk to me just a little bit, and talk to the audience a little bit about what are some steps we're taking to help get over the bridge and go from that more traditional 2.0 model of instruction that was on the video to a more of a 3.0 model.
I just want to share, we have from those collaborative, what's that? From those collaborative groups where our teachers who used to teach in isolation, study through all their lessons themselves, they're now being able to go work with, we're in Freeport, but not just Freeport teachers, but Clute, Lake Jackson, all of us working as a team to coming out of that and having one of our teachers work and with a teacher from Miss Pope's campus, and they're Skyping. So they have 2 classes going on at the same time. One teacher at Velasco gets on the camera, and the teacher at Polk gets on the camera, and this is a bilingual class, and hers is an English class, and they are presenting projects to one another. So that is just a small snapshot of what those collaborative groups have brought and really enhanced the teaching and the learning of our students. And take that a further step is our first graders did research on sharks, and then they got to Skype with a shark specialist in the Bahamas. And it was just amazing to see, so.
Something I would share too that is being done, certainly I think one of the best things is what Ms. Cundiff is mentioning is we're going in groups, and so it's hard to go over that bridge all by yourself. You get really nervous. But when you go as a team and you have each other's support, that helps a lot. But another thing that I would share that we're doing is if you're on this side of the bridge and you're nervous about what's to come, if you can at least get a picture of what that looks like, you start feeling more comfortable with it. So in the past, administrators went into classrooms for either observations or walk-through observations. And at least just in the walkthroughs, we might be in there 4 or 5 minutes and see what's happening in the classroom. But teachers never had that opportunity. Teachers never saw anyone else teach besides themselves. They never saw that. Rarely you might be able to see a video. I was in a program at one point where you could go in like twice a year. You rarely got to see somebody else teach. And that's how all other professions learn. A doctor doesn't learn by just studying or just doing it themselves. They learn by watching and being alongside others that are doing it. So this year, one of the things that we've done is started bringing teachers with us as we do the walkthroughs. And actually, on my campus, and I think most campuses, or probably all campuses, may be doing it this way, our teachers that have been trained in best practices are actually the ones leading the walkthrough groups. So a teacher who's been trained will take 3 other teachers with her to visit 4 or 5 classrooms. And after each visit, they'll discuss what they saw, what Bloom's taxonomy level was being taught, what best practices were being utilized, what grouping strategies were being utilized. And that discussion is very good for teachers. And I know that the teachers, after they've experienced that, they've not all gotten to yet because we've just recently started it this school year. But once they've done that, they will end their 5th classroom with smiles on their face saying, that was fun, that was fun. I never get to see anyone else teach. So I think that's one of the big things that we've done.
Great job. Anything else to add to that? We good? All righty. Aren't they amazing? Let's give them one more round of applause. But this time what we'll do is we will start collecting questions. So if you have questions, if you want to hold up your cards, and Miss Kristen will pick those up. Miss Kristen, any cards? Not I keep making up questions for them. Okay, we got a few. We also have all of our principals, not all of them, but a lot of our principals here. So while you're thinking of your questions, why don't I go ahead and have our principals come up to the front and let them introduce themselves to you so that you know who they are as well. So the rest of our principals, come on up and we'll let you just introduce yourself and your campus. They are thrilled with me doing that right now.
I'm Lori Claus, and I'm the principal at Jane Long Elementary in Freeport.
I'm Robert Raspberry, and I'm the principal of the Lighthouse Learning Center.
Hello, I'm Tracy Phillips, and I'm the principal at Brazosport High School.
Hello, I'm Laura Morris, and I'm the principal at A.P. Boyle Elementary. Sarah Wright, principal at Owen Roberts Elementary.
I'm Julie Evans, the principal at Best Brannon.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Crutchfield. I'm the principal at O.A. Fleming Elementary in Freeport.
Hello, I'm Elena Gutierrez, and I'm the principal at Stephen F. Austin Elementary in Jones Creek.
Hello, I'm Ronnie Barnes. I'm principal at Brazosport High School. Thank you.
Now I know these are quite the talkers, so is there anything, they were sitting up there I'm sure itching to talk, is there anything you guys want to add while we're collecting some questions, anything you want to add to some of the comments that were made? I'll start putting you on the spot here in a minute. Mr. Barnes left. That's one way to get out of answering questions.
She wants me to read this, but I need glasses first. I really need a magnifying.
She needs her glasses, yes.
I don't know who gave this to you.
It's a star question.
This is a star question, so I didn't kind of want to know what you were talking about. Kathy is organizing the bottles of nail polish at a store. There are a total of 296 bottles. If Kathy puts the same number of bottles on each of 4 shelves, how many bottles will be on each shelf? Record your answer and fill in the bubbles on your answer document. Be sure to correct
sure to use the correct place value.
That's a fifth grade question. That's complex.
I think there are some that are more complex than that, actually.
Absolutely.
I think the goal was to share with you some of the really the complexity of some of the questions our kids are asked. And the thing about it is our kids are doing great on that. They are really, it is a change in mindset for them because they're used to those basic computation problems. But as they continue to learn in the mode of constant problem solving and collaborating and discussing their thinking and discussing their answers, they're becoming more and more skilled at answering such complex questions. So it's very exciting to watch. We do have some questions here. You guys are welcome to stand up here and answer them if you want to. Or you're welcome to sit down too. Okay, what percentage of students have access to e-books in class and to take home? Great question. Access to e-books.
I can only speak for my campus. On my campus, it's more of a BYOD. Students are able to bring their own devices and use them in the classroom along. If the teachers are allowing them to utilize, there's no set percentage. For the most part, if I was to say a percentage from campus, students that bring me about 30% if they were to bring their own devices to school to utilize.
I would say about the same thing. I have my language department chair, Marissa Gonzalez, introduced her classes last year to the Wattpad. That's what it's called, Wattpad. And kids can go and download free books. And I'll never forget, in one of the classrooms, a little girl had her cell phone out. She was reading a book, and one of the teachers went and said, give me your cell phone. Give me your cell phone. I'm not using it. I'm not texting. I'm not doing anything. What are you doing? I'm reading a book. So, hey, let them have it out if they're reading the book. But I would say about 30% of our kids they have a cell phone and use it.
Okay. We have some other questions, and some of our high school folks may want to come up and help out with. How are we implementing students to continue to pursue a degree further than high school education? Beyond basically, how are we continuing to get them to pursue a degree, that college readiness? And I think that one of the things that is really important to understand is that we still strive to make sure all of our kids are college and career ready, that they can go any pathway that they choose, that they are equipped to do that they can choose any pathway. And so I think that is really our number one goal. We are continuing to increase our dual credit courses. We are continuing to work with with the college to allow students to take courses there, as well as increase their certifications. Mr. Barnes, you want to add to that?
At Brazosport High School, we have a partnership with Texas A&M, Advise Texas, and a lot of times students don't understand that there is money out there for them to go to college. So we make sure we bring the parents in and they begin to trust us, because a lot of times they don't want to give up their information because they're just afraid. And so a lot of our parents, especially if they're English language learners, sometimes they don't feel like there's anyone out there for them. So we have a gigantic deals where we pull them in and we go through the hospital with them and take all the threat out of the situation, and we start talking to them early. We brag on our students that are successful by putting things up to show that you can do it from there and things of that nature. So it's really out there, and we make sure that we put the curriculum in, to all of them, that we engage all of them so that they'll have that problem solving skills so they can go to any level, whether it be career or college. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. We have quite a few questions, so I want to try to get through as many of them as we can. If students do not have internet access, how will they be able to use an online textbook, and how quickly will these books be accessed?
That's a great question, but I think as we see that technology is changing so rapidly that and Wi-Fi is becoming more accessible, that we're going to see the ease of that transpire over the coming years. In addition to that, there's many inner city schools that have gone to a flipped classroom and using online textbooks and such that find ways to keep labs open for students and those types of things. So as we continue to move towards Education 3.0 and become more engaged with technology in our current learners, we're going to have to find ways to adapt and ensure that they have access to those tools and to that learning. And as we learn, they will learn with us as well.
I want to add to that. I know that we've mentioned a lot about teachers and them having to adapt and learn and adjust, but us as administrators have also had to do the same thing. We've had to learn right along with everything that's coming at us so quickly. We just had, at our last principals meeting, we talked about that as being one of the challenges is providing ways for our students to have internet, and we brainstormed ideas to help bridge that divide, because there is a technology divide right now, and there are lots of students who don't have access to the technology that's coming at them so quickly. So just last week, we sat as administrators and brainstormed what we can do in our community to build those partnerships with those companies that do have access and provide more for our students. So we are working towards that.
We have a couple of questions related to how we're addressing the schools that have not done as well on the accountability system, the new accountability system in the STAR, and did not, are an improvement required. So anyone want to address that?
We've definitely looked at our data a whole lot more. We broke down, as a matter of fact, one of my teachers did it. We, as a campus, got hit an index too, which is student progress. And so one of the things we looked at is, obviously you always want them to progress, and the state of Texas doesn't necessarily make it easy to understand on the conversions. But so we've really, really looked at that, but we've gone back to what do our students need? Is it vocabulary? Do we need to work on some of the words on those tests? If you read through them, and I encourage you to go onto TEA and look at those tests, because some of the words are things that most of our students haven't been exposed to. So do we need to expose them to that? Is it problem solving? We go back to that whole collaboration and being able to work through problems. So our campus, each campus is focused on the students, which I think is the most important, and what is it that we need to push them to get them that direction, because these tests are multi-steps, and really just looking at that data.
Any other?
I know we've talked about some wonderful things in technology and project-based learning, but the reality is we do have a state test. So one of the things as we were going through our needs assessment and looking and analyzing our data is what was missing. Our students can do their basic, they have the basic facts down. And yeah, their vocabulary is limited, but they can still read through a basic passage. But what is the missing piece? And the missing piece is actually that problem-solving piece and that really higher order thinking where they're having to think critically through those problems. And what we found is, as we were going through the needs assessment, is to implement this project-based learning so that students could not, like Ms. Traylor said, remember teaching it all in isolation, but teaching it all integrated. So as I was in that training, I asked the presenter, okay, this is all grand and having a project and making it relevant is wonderful, but what about the state test? And several of the schools that have been in implemented project-based learning 3 and 4 years into it said, well, we would always say, okay, this is what it looks like in the real world. This is what it looks like on the state test. And what they found is as the students worked through the projects, it was so easy for them to apply it to the state test because they were in the driver's seat. So we're hoping as we pilot this that we're really going to see some improved results.
Let me ask you this on that, since we did have 2 questions. Do you feel as though you have a clear plan for how to improve, or is it just a guessing game?
We approached with STAR and the increased accountability and the rigor of the test caused us all to go back and look and ensure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. And every campus has done that through data teams, and data drives decisions. And I haven't been in the district as long as some of my colleagues up here have been, but you know, data is important. And I'll make an analogy. I came from the athletic side of the house, and I think of it as game film of what's happening. And so what is taking place in the classroom is the teacher's game film, is the administrator's game film, to make adjustments in what we need to do to ensure that our students are growing and getting better. And so every campus has a game plan, and we have set goals and expectations, and we are working through that game plan and monitoring that game plan on regular intervals and making adjustments to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students as they progress throughout this year. And every one of us already are making plans to start looking at next year and getting that game plan ready and progressing forward.
But I do want to I want to mention the teachers have been very critical in those plans. The teachers have been a major part of that. You know, in the past, teachers would just look at their students' data, and they would really work really hard to get their students where they needed to be. And now there's so much more support. We have a campus team, which at our campus is all of the grade level leaders. I'm talking pre-K through 4th grade. And we meet and look at data, all of the school's data. Then every quarter, because they help write our plans, so the teachers write the plans, and then every quarter, people from the district, Mr. Redden's been my best friend in helping us work through that plan. So we have a huge piece, and we're not just looking at state data, we're looking at attendance, we're looking at discipline, we're looking at intervention, we're looking at progress. So we have really, really detailed plans, and we're making adjustments as we go. But I can't say enough about all the teachers and the hard work that they've put into this.
Just real quick, I want to add, and Rita touched on this right at the end, I'll just add to it real quick. When we talk about data, for those that are not familiar with the education side and what kind of data we look at, it is that attendance data, it's failure rates, it's monitoring of common assessments, it's monitoring on benchmark scoring, and comparing that with how we did last year and where we are at now, attendance data, discipline data, what is the environment of the school, and are there particular areas in discipline, are there particular teachers that are writing kids up or having more discipline issues than other kids? Do they need interventions? Is there a particular issue there? Is there attendance issues that are taking place for a kid? So looking at the entire culture and campus and all of that is the data that we're referring to when we talk about our plans.
And it's beyond just the instruction piece of it. Part of our plan was mentoring, because the students need that extra encouragement and that one person to check in. We also had counseling as part of ours, because testing anxiety is a big piece right now. And so we wanted to make sure that we addressed any testing anxiety or stress that our students are going through, even beyond just the educational day. So those things were also a focus. Like I said, it's really going back to look at your students and who you're serving and what their needs are. And that's how we planned all of the teachers. And I agree with Ms. Cundiff. The teachers were very vital in this development.
Great job. See, I told you if I gave them the microphone, they just talk, lots to say, and very passionate. Well, there were a couple of questions on this one that I'm going to answer quickly for sake of time, because we only have about 5 minutes left, and I know you guys want to get to dinner tonight. One of the questions was about communities and schools. Communities and schools existed in this district, I believe, about 4 or 5 years ago. It was before I came. It was already gone when I got here, but it may have been 10 years ago. Oh, 10 years ago. Okay. So we haven't had communities and schools for quite some time. Communities and schools schools is where you had a social worker on campuses. We do have 2 social workers that work within our district and provide support to our campuses, but communities and schools has not been around for quite some time, and mainly because it's really expensive. It's a really expensive program. It doesn't mean it's not something we continue to look at, because we do believe there's power and importance of having social workers, especially as we continue to grow more and more at risk with our economically disadvantaged. They said ECOD a few times. I hope you understood. Economically disadvantaged are students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Also, a question on this was about what are some programs that we have put into place to help with our Hispanic students. This is really focusing on our bilingual education. One of the things that we have just implemented is a new bilingual model for, right now it's in the early implementation stages. It's called the Gomez and Gomez model, and that's taking place in our primary grades, K1, pre-K, K, and 1 right now, and we'll continue to move up for our bilingual program. We're also currently paying for our teachers to receive their ESL certification, which is English as a Second Language certification, so that all of our teachers will be trained in serving students who speak a second language, as well as there's additional trainings called on sheltered instruction and vocabulary development, which are all 2 vital components of working with our second language learners. Oh yes, and we're also offering English language classes for our parents as well. Okay, this question is, we've heard several examples of how teachers are collaborating, but what examples do you see on helping kids develop collaboration skills?
Well, this year on our campus, actually last year at Freeport Intermediate, we started, and it's a district initiative also, classroom instruction that works, and part of that is cooperative learning. And we had our instructional coach come and do a full day with our teachers on cooperative groups and how they're structured and how everyone has a job. I just think of the timekeeper and the scribe and how to facilitate that within your classroom. Also, within a class period, chunking the learning into smaller chunks. Talk for a little bit, and then let the kids talk and discuss about what was being discussed by the teacher. I think that's real important. Turn to your, I say elbow partner again, but turn to your elbow partner, or turn to the person back behind you, or not holler across the room, or think, pair, share. But I think those are 2 of the things that we've really focused on, more cooperative learning and providing those students the opportunity to talk about what they're doing. So it'll sink in.
Okay. I'm going to build off of that because the next question just adds to that.
I'm so sorry. You just said that, for the bilinguals and stuff. I talked to the principal in TWR, and they said that they don't have enough money to hire teachers for 2nd and 3rd grade. So how is that? And they happen to have to go to McGriffith, where they have 2 classrooms full of 22 kids each classroom for the same grade, for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. So that's, one of my main questions. I don't know.
Yeah, we actually, the funding of our number of teachers is not an issue. If we get to the 22-to-1 ratio that is required by state law, if we get over that, then we hire a new teacher. And so there are some situations where we have gotten over that, and the campus has made the decision to hire an aide to help support that just until the end of the year. And in that case, we've supported the campus in doing that. But if that's a situation, I'd love to hear about that after this meeting and know specifically which campus.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry the principal from TWR is not here, so he can, because I actually talked to him, and he said that the district didn't have funding to hire a teacher.
Okay, well, we can talk about that here. Let me finish these questions that were asked, and then we'll go, because I know these people asked their question. Critical thinking skills. How are you teaching and developing critical thinking skills? You talked about collaboration skills, critical thinking. I know how you're goes back to talking about the level of rigor in which you are teaching it. Do you want to talk about that at all with your McRail as well as the Bloom's taxonomy? I'm looking at the panel. Anyone?
Robin does.
I think that Ms. Traylor was kind of hitting on that when she was talking about the process and helping students understand and be able to explain the process and how they solve problems. That's a big part of the critical thinking piece. Is not just arriving at an answer, but being able to understand the answer well enough to explain it, to interpret it, to apply it in a different scenario, to transfer it to a different subject area, and making connections there. So that's one thing that I'd mention. When the students are put in situations where they're working collaboratively, they are generating information that they can actually take and then not just give an answer to a problem, but really explain the back part behind it. I don't know that I'm pulling the right words to the front of my mind, but they can really process through and apply it in a different scenario. I think that's a big thing that the teachers are working toward, is helping students not just be able to solve any problem in isolation, but be able to understand the problem and then be able to interpret it in a different way or transfer it to a different scenario and apply it in that way.
Or maybe even an interdisciplinary connection. How does this math connect to science? I know Melena Gutierrez and we used to teach on the same team,
And she was a science teacher and I was a math teacher, and so many times I can remember, how could I incorporate your science into my math, because they're so interconnected. It became even more interesting when the history teacher was doing math in her class, but we won't go there because she wasn't very good at math. But anyway, but I think more so than applied to scenarios, also how does it fit into the other disciplines?
Okay. Great questions. The rest of our questions relate specifically to high school. So because of the fact we have passed our hour, I'm going to ask if you had questions specifically about high school, that after this, that you come up here and our high school principals will be happy to answer some of those about you. Here's what the topics were, so you guys will know. Block scheduling at Beewood, the new elective structure at LJI and Beewood, and then increase in engineering at the high school, so CTE programs. I know Ms. Batt's here, as well as getting kids to take more of our CTE courses. And are we familiar with MOOC? Y'all not big, more that is. So, and then how are we measuring college readiness? So those are some questions that are still lingering that I believe our high school folks can answer. And then I want to meet with you guys individually, and Mr. Massey, I know you'll want to as well, to talk about staffing allocations. So I want to once again say thank you so much. We want to hear your questions. So if you had a question that you thought of and you didn't get to ask it, please come up to us after. We'd love to answer it for you. And again, I want to say thank you so much for being here and for just being in partnership with BISD and for coming to our Be Informed. Stay warm. Have a great night.